I am Eric Guido of Vinous, and I am standing here with Christophe Baron of Bionic Wines. So I really wanted to talk to Christophe today because his story is one of the most important stories, in my opinion, in Washington wine. Christophe came to Washington with a desire to find an old world terroir that he could create a new world wine in. And I would really appreciate, Christophe, if you can kind of tell us a little bit of the story of how that came to happen.
Thank you very much. And first of all, cheers.
Cheers.
Yes. And we are actually drinking a Horsepower 2021 Grenache from Field & Neck Vineyard. The wine is spectacular, beautiful Grenache, high density planting, 3.5 by 3.5. We farm with draft horses. So it's a very, very unique place. But to answer your question, so how we came actually to discover that piece of land, right? I was going through Walla Walla with a friend of mine, and we are driving through the Milton Friar area, which actually is on the Oregon side of the Walla Walla Valley. But what's very important actually is Walla Walla Valley as a whole, an entity, okay? And we're driving through the area, and I stumbled by a 10-acre block there, and it was really, really littered with stones the size of a fist to a softball, and asked my friend to pull over. And I asked him, is there vineyards here in this area? He goes no, I don't think so, there's vineyards. There is orchards everywhere, but no vineyards. I said, well, this is it. I'm gonna buy that piece of land and I'm gonna plant Syrah. This is how the dream started.
And so how did you decide, I mean, you have Grenache in your glass, but how did you decide to start with Syrah in Washington State? Was that, how many people was that a thing at that time?
That was becoming a thing at the time. You know, at the time, actually, the darling of Washington State was, of course, always Cabernet Sauvignon, but Merlot. Mm-hmm. And then Syrah was getting more and more notoriety. And this is the reason why, and I love Syrah because I studied in Beaune in Burgundy, but we used to go to south of Lyon in Côte-Rôtie and Hermitage on the weekend as a student, you know, and that's how I fell in love with Syrah. So the plant material was available, and it was getting, you know, because of the Hospice du Rhône, for instance, and the Rhône Ranger in California, it was getting some momentum in Walla Walla in Washington State. So that's the reason why I'm well, I think I've got a pretty good shot with Syrah.
So this originally started with Cayuse.
Yes.
And then when you created Horsepower, what was the passion behind creating Horsepower?
So basically this is, all the vineyards are in the same area, the stones of Milton Freywater. It's very, very unique terroir. It resembles Châteauneuf-du-Pape to some extent, like the Galets Roulés, the cobblestones, but in fact has nothing in common with Châteauneuf-du-Pape. So the first 16 to 18 inches is a mix of silty, loam and stones, basalt, ancient riverbed, basalt stones, and it goes like that for hundreds of feet. You know, so that's what the terroir is like over there. It's rich in iron, rich in manganese, and makes wine that are very, very savory. Mm-hmm. And we started with Cayuse, so basically the Cayuse vineyards, they are farmed with tractors, and they are from moderate density to medium density planting. So 10 feet between the rows, 4 feet between the vines, and then I planted some vineyards 6 feet between the rows and 4 feet between the vines. And then in 2008, we decided actually to push the envelope and plant more vines per acre. So with Horsepower, we have about 3,500 vines per acre, 3.5 by 3.5. And that makes wines actually that are even more earthy. Maybe less fruit forward, but beautiful umami, complexity, savory, earthy character in the Horsepower wines. And this is basically, this is what we do. That's what Horsepower is bringing to the table. And those wines are not mainstream wines. Either you're gonna really love those wines or you're gonna hate them. And I'm okay with that.
Well, so one of the things I always find most amazing about your wines is that even when they're young, they possess so much energy. They're so complex, but they possess so much energy. But in the same token, they age remarkably well. But in their youth, I mean, from my opinion, when I first taste these are so enjoyable. How is it that they can be so enjoyable upon release, but then they age so remarkably well over time?
This is a great question, Eric. This is a mystery. I don't have the answer to that. Indeed, I mean, the wines are pretty high pH, usually between 3.8 to 4. So it's pretty high pH. And people will say, well, with this kind of pH, the wine are not going to age. This being said, upon release, they are very enjoyable. Then they can age. I mean, so beautiful. Like, to give you an example, last night we had dinner at the 2-star Michelin in town, at Terra, and on the list there was a bottle of a 2003 en Chamberlain vineyard, and I bought that bottle actually to have a glass and then to share with the sommelier team there. We are all blown away. I mean, the wine is like 21-year-old and it's so fresh. Unbelievable.
Interesting. And what is your favorite cure song?
My favorite what?
Cure song.
Oh, Cure. Oh, those Brits, the Cures. Well, man, I mean, great band from the 80s. I would say probably like 100 Days.
Okay, sure,
Right.
absolutely.
So,
Well, I think you guys all heard it here. Christophe Barone, who is making some pretty incredible wines here at Icons, and certainly an icon of the region. If you haven't tasted the wines, you absolutely need to seek them out.
thank you. Cheers. Thank you, Eric. Santé.